In 1986, the Snedeker family's life was upended. Their 14-year-old son, Philip, had been diagnosed with a severe case of Hodgkin's lymphoma, and his survival depended on an aggressive regimen of daily cobalt treatments. Those treatments were 60 miles away at a hospital in Connecticut. With medical bills mounting and the daily commute becoming impossible, the parents, Carmen and Al, needed an affordable rental close to the specialists. They needed a home that could accommodate 6 people on a budget that was rapidly disappearing. They found a sprawling colonial-style house with a rent they could actually manage. The downstairs apartment appeared to be a perfectly normal suburban residence, a quiet place where the family could finally focus on Philip's recovery. Every choice Carmen and Al made was dictated by their bank balance and their son's health. In that state of total emotional exhaustion, the house's history was a secondary concern. They simply needed a bed for Philip near his doctor's, unaware that their desperation was leading them into a situation they weren't prepared to handle. The reality of the property was revealed in the basement. It wasn't just a storage space, it was an intact mortuary. The room still contained heavy body hoists, boxes of metallic toe tags, and concrete pits designed to drain blood from the deceased. The landlord had omitted the property's former life as a funeral home during the initial viewing. By the time the Snedekers discovered the tools used to prep bodies, they had already spent their remaining savings on the move. They were financially trapped. Philip was forced to sleep in the basement bedrooms. Almost immediately, he reported a heavy feeling in the air and heard a voice, a deep, disembodied man's voice calling to him from the dark end of the hallway, urging the boy to come and see what was waiting for him. Philip was already physically vulnerable from the lymphoma treatments. Now his environment matched his physical state. He was sleeping in a subterranean room where his only company was the silence of a former morgue and a voice that refused to let him rest. Philip's personality shifted with terrifying speed. The once quiet boy became aggressive and isolated, telling his parents that the voices in the basement were now giving him specific, dark instructions. He began describing vivid visions of pale, emaciated men with glassy white eyes. He claimed they would stand motionless in the corners of the old mortuary rooms, watching him while he tried to sleep. The situation reached a horrific climax when Philip's cousins moved into the house. He was caught attempting to molest them, later blaming his actions entirely on the demonic voices he claimed were controlling his mind. Philip was taken into custody by the police and placed in a psychiatric ward. There, doctors officially diagnosed the 14-year-old with schizophrenia. This escalation creates a conflict between two interpretations. To the family, this was the evidence of a demonic possession taking hold of a vulnerable child. To the doctors, it was a young mind breaking under the weight of cancer, medication, and extreme trauma. After Philip was removed, the reported activity only intensified. Carmen described sudden, inexplicable swarms of flies invading the house, and she claimed that a bucket of mop water turned completely blood red while she was cleaning the kitchen floor. The claims then shifted toward physical violence. The female members of the family reported being grabbed and sexually assaulted by invisible entities in the bathrooms and bedrooms, leaving them terrified in their own home. With local priests and police unable to find a cause or stop the incidents, the family's world shrank. They abandoned the bedrooms entirely and began sleeping huddled together on mattresses in the living room. Philip was gone, but the narrative had expanded into a shared, violent nightmare that affected the entire household. The Snedekers felt they had no choice but to seek out the most famous paranormal experts in the country. Ed and Lorraine Warren soon arrived at the doorstep. Ed was a self-proclaimed demonologist, and Lorraine was a clairvoyant. Together, they took command of the investigation. Lorraine claimed to see visions of the basement's past, stating that a necrophiliac mortician had practiced unspeakable acts on the corpses there. These acts, she argued, had directly invited demonic forces to inhabit the house. To cleanse the home, the Warrens brought in priests for an official exorcism. The 4-hour ritual reportedly caused the house to shake and smoke to rise from the carpets until the activity finally ceased. For the Snedekers, the exorcism provided the supernatural validation they had been searching for. It turned their private trauma into a modern legend of demonic haunting. This timeline compares the reported supernatural events with the family's financial situation. The records show that as the family began to fall behind on rent and face eviction, the claims of paranormal activity increased significantly, leading neighbors to suspect the ghosts were a financial strategy. Looking for a way to tell their story, the family and the Warrens hired horror author Ray Garton to write a book about the experience. Garton later confessed that he struggled with the project because the family's stories were constantly contradicting each other. When he brought these concerns to Ed Warren, Ed allegedly told him, "They're crazy. Just use what you can and make the rest up. We'll make it up and make it scary." The introduction of a ghostwriter's confession and the evidence of financial motives cast a long shadow over the supernatural authority of the case. This diagram maps the staggering density of real-world trauma hitting the family at once. They were simultaneously navigating cancer, schizophrenia, an alcoholic stepfather, and the murder of a grandfather. In psychological terms, these factors create a breeding ground for shared psychogenic illness. Under extreme claustrophobic stress, a family can begin to experience and validate collective delusions as a way to process their reality. The paranormal media industry chose to overlook these psychological realities. They leaned into the more profitable narrative of demons and mortuaries, ignoring the human suffering behind the story. The story of the Snedeker house remains a fixture of paranormal lore. However, the most disturbing element of the case is the speed at which a family's genuine psychological collapse was sanitized, repackaged, and sold as entertainment.